Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. Before we get into today's video, I'd like to talk about our sponsor, Into the AM. Into the AM creates premium high-quality apparel that focuses on self-expression and unparalleled comfort. I have tried these shirts myself and they are super comfortable. They have cool shirt designs and they really stand out over so many of my other tees. I really like the way they fit on my body and how soft they feel when I wear them. Into the AM's team of skilled artisans craft each garment from the highest quality fabrics and eco-friendly inks. They support their products with a 30-day money-back guarantee, hassle-free returns, and lightning-fast shipping. They also strive to give back, raising money for scholarships, charities, and support in impactful ways to our communities. Right now, they are running a bundle deal for their graphic tees at 3 for $60, so check out my link in the description below and you'll get an additional 10% off as well. A big thanks for Into the AM for sponsoring today's video. We play at many conventions throughout the year to get a chance to play with you all on camera. For this game, we went to Command Fest Richmond. We had a great time and played some awesome games. Stay tuned to our social media to find out the next convention we will attend. Now, let's start out by showcasing our fighters this evening. First, we have Kevin piloting the partner pair of Tana the Bloodsower and Tymna the Weaver. This deck, called Metapod, seeks to stacks out the board and eventually win through a birthing pod line. Kevin's opening hand contains a Loyal Apprentice, Plateau, Chalice of the Void, Sylvan Safekeeper, Taiga, Bloodstained Mire, and his London Mulligan is a Felidar Guardian. Next, we have Josh piloting Eruth, Tormented Prophet. You might know Josh from Mind Muscle Magic. Be sure to check him out on YouTube and Twitter. This is a storm list that aims to use Eruth's massive card velocity in conjunction with Breach Lines or Aetherflux Reservoir. Josh's opening hand contains a Springleaf Drum, Fiery Islet, Steam Vents, Time Twister, and his 3 London Mulligans are Faithless Looting, Mystic Sanctuary, and a Force of Will. After that, we have Matt piloting Urza, Lord High Artificer. This is a stacked control list. While it does run Hullbreaker Horror, it is not the Polytyrant version. Its goal is to stacks out the board and go for one of the many artifact-based combos. Matt's opening hand contains an Everflowing Chalice, Jeweled Lotus, Cephalid Colosseum, Inventor's Fair, Counterspell, Mox Diamond, and a Malevolent Hermit. Finally, we have Mike piloting Winota, Joiner of Forces. This deck, titled Winota Snowball Stacks, aims to land early key stacked pieces and use its commander to snowball them into even more disruption. Mike's opening hand contains a Scalding Tarn, Ethersworn Canonist, Giver of Runes, Ornithopter, Drannith Magistrate, and his London Mulligans are Serra Ascendant and Mox Diamond. Without further ado, let's begin this fabulous fictional fallacy of Fearless Fisherman. Kevin wins the Double Master Booster Box Challenge and gets to start us off. Kevin draws a card for turn and plays a Taiga. He casts Ignoble Hierarch. He casts Chalice of the Void, where X equals 0. The table groans and knows what type of game this is going to be. He passes. Josh draws a card for turn and plays a Steam Vents into play untapped, paying 2 life. He casts Springleaf Drum. He passes. Matt draws and plays a Cephalid Colosseum. He angrily stares at Chalice of the Void and takes no other actions. He gives the turn to Mike. Mike draws and plays a Scalding Tarn. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Plateau onto the battlefield. He casts Giver of Runes. He ends his turn. Kevin draws and plays a Bloodstained Mire. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Scrubland onto the battlefield. He casts his commander, Tymna the Weaver. He ships the turn. Josh draws and plays a Fiery Islet. He passes. Matt draws and plays a Snow-Covered Island. He gives the turn to Mike. Mike draws and plays a Command Tower. He casts Drannith Magistrate. In response, Josh casts Mystical Tutor. He fetches up a Lightning Bolt onto the top of his library. With Drannith still on the stack, Matt taps his Cephalid Colosseum to help cast Counterspell, countering Drannith. All finished up, Mike passes. Kevin draws and casts Loyal Apprentice. He moves to combat and Loyal Apprentice triggers, creating a 1/1 Flying Thopter with haste. He swings Tymna at Josh, Loyal Apprentice at Matt, and the Thopter at Mike. They all take it and Kevin gains 2 life. In his second main phase, Kevin pays 3 life and draws 3 through Tymna. Kevin says he's living the Tymna dream and the table laughs. He plays a Plateau for turn. He casts Collect Eruth. He passes. Josh draws, takes no actions, and passes. Matt draws and plays a Blast Zone. It enters with a charge counter. He takes no other actions and gives the turn to Mike. Mike draws and casts Serra Ascendant. He ships the turn. Kevin draws and plays a Verdant Catacombs. He casts Mayhem Devil. He casts Sylvan Safekeeper. In response, Josh casts Lightning Bolt, killing Tymna. Kevin moves to combat and attacks Josh with Loyal Apprentice and Collector Oof. Josh takes it, and all finished up, Kevin passes. Josh draws, and a single tear rolls down his cheek as he takes no other actions and passes. Matt draws and plays an Inventor's Fair. He taps his Cephalid Colosseum to help cast his commander, Urza, Lord High Artificer. Urza enters and he creates a construct. Matt ends his turn. Mike draws and immediately moves to combat, attacking Kevin with Serra Ascendant. Kevin blocks with a Thopter and Mike gains 6 life. In his second main phase, Mike casts Ethersworn Canonist. He ships the turn to Kevin. Kevin draws and plays a Flooded Strand. He cracks his Flooded Strand and Verdant Catacombs, paying 2 life total. Mayhem Devil triggers twice, both targeting Giver of Runes. In response, Mike taps Giver of Runes to give Ethersworn Canonist protection from red until end of turn. Giver of Runes dies, and Kevin fetches up a Savannah onto the battlefield and a Bayou onto the battlefield. He recasts his commander, Tymna the Weaver. He moves to combat, and Loyal Apprentice triggers, creating a Thopter. He attacks Matt with a Thopter and Josh with Mayhem Devil, Loyal Apprentice, and Collector Eruth. Everyone takes it, and in his second main phase, Kevin pays 2 and draws 2 through Tymna. With nothing else, he ships the turn to Josh. Josh draws and plays a Flooded Strand. He cracks it, pays a life, and Mayhem Devil triggers, dealing 1 damage to Matt's construct, killing it. Josh fetches up a Volcanic Island onto the battlefield. He taps his Fiery Islet to help cast Imperial Recruiter. It enters, and he fetches up a Dockside Extortionist into his hand. Josh gives the turn to Matt. Matt draws and casts Imposter Mech. It enters as a copy of Mayhem Devil. The table regains some hope against the tyrant named Kevin, and Matt gives the turn to Mike. Mike draws and immediately moves to combat. He attacks Kevin with Sarah Ascendant. Kevin takes it, and Mike gains 6. All finished up, Mike ends his turn. Kevin draws and immediately moves to combat. Loyal Apprentice triggers, and he creates a Thopter. He attacks Josh with Mayhem Devil and Collector Oof, Matt with Tymna, and Mike with a Thopter. Matt blocks Tymna with Urza, and Kevin gains 2 life. In his second main phase, Kevin pays 2 and draws 2 through Tymna. He plays a Blood Crypt into play untapped, paying 2 life. He casts Sanctum Prelate. It enters, and Kevin names 2. The table starts to lose all hope again, and Kevin ends his turn. Josh draws and casts Dockside Extortionist. It enters, and he creates 5 treasures. He passes. At the end of Josh's turn, Matt taps Cephalid Coliseum to activate Blast Zone, adding a counter. The turn moves to Matt. Matt draws and channels Otawara Soaring City, targeting Chalice of the Void. It resolves, and Chalice is bounced. Matt casts Everflowing Chalice where X equals 0. He casts Jeweled Lotus. He casts Jeweled Amulet. He casts Malevolent Hermit. He passes. At this point, you might be wondering, how does Matt tap his artifacts when there's a Collector Oof out? Well, Urza's ability doesn't actually get stopped by Collector Oof because it's an activated ability of Urza, the creature, not the artifact itself. Anyway, back to the game. Mike draws and plays a Wooded Foothills. He cracks it, pays a life, and both Mayhem Devils trigger. Kevin targets Imperial Recruiter, and Matt targets Loyal Apprentice. Loyal Apprentice and Imperial Recruiter die, then Mike fetches up a Sacred Foundry into play untapped, paying 2 life. He casts Professional Facebreaker. He moves to combat and attacks Josh with Ethersworn Canonist and Matt with Sarah Ascendant. They both take it, and Mike gains 6 life. Facebreaker triggers twice, and Mike creates 2 treasures. He casts Ornithopter. He gives the turn to Kevin. Kevin draws and plays an Ancient Tomb. He taps it to help cast Elish Norn, Grand Cenobite. In response, Josh casts Force the Will, paying a life and exiling a blue card, countering Elish Norn. Kevin moves to combat and attacks Josh with Collector Oof, Mayhem Devil, and Tymna. Josh takes it, and Kevin gains 2 life. In his second main phase, Kevin pays 1 and draws 1 through Tymna. Finished up, Kevin passes the turn. Josh draws and taps his Fiery Islet to help cast his commander, Eruth, Tormented Prophet. He passes. Matt draws and starts off his turn by tapping at Cephalid Coliseum to slam down a Hullbreaker Horror. With Hullbreaker Horror being uncounterable, the table prepares for the worst, and it resolves. Matt casts Mox Diamond. Hullbreaker triggers, targeting Jeweled Lotus. In response, Mike activates Professional Facebreaker, sacrificing a treasure. Both Mayhem Devils trigger, Kevin targets Malevolent Hermit, and Matt targets Sylvan Safekeeper. Both are destroyed, then Facebreaker's ability resolves, and Mike exiles an Ancient Tomb. Still in response to the Hullbreaker trigger, Kevin casts Deflecting Swat for its alternate cost, changing the Hullbreaker trigger to target Hullbreaker Horror itself. Hullbreaker is bounced, and then Matt doesn't discard a land, and Mox Diamond goes to the graveyard. He plays a War Room. All finished up, and with his victory thwarted, he gives the turn to Mike. Mike draws and immediately moves to combat. He attacks Josh with Sarah Ascendant and Matt with Professional Facebreaker. They both take it, and Mike gains 6 life. Facebreaker triggers twice, and Mike creates 2 treasures. Mike passes. Kevin draws and casts Mox Diamond, discarding Polluted Delta. He attacks Matt with a Thopter, and Ignoble Hierarch triggers, giving it +1/+1. Matt takes it, and in his second main phase, Kevin pays 1 and draws 1 through Tymna. He casts Imperial Seal. He fetches up a card onto the top of his library and loses 2 life. He recasts Chalice of the Void where X equals 0. All through, Kevin passes. During his draw step, Josh exiles Snap and Wooded Foothills off of the top of his library through Eruth. He plays a Wooded Foothills. All finished up, he gives the turn to Matt. Matt draws, takes no actions, and passes. Mike draws and immediately moves to combat. He attacks Kevin with Sarah Ascendant. Kevin blocks with a Thopter, and Mike gains 6. In his second main phase, he casts Spirit of the Labyrinth. He passes. At the end of Mike's turn, Kevin flashes in an Aven Mind Sensor. Kevin draws and immediately moves to combat. He attacks Josh with Aven Mind Sensor, killing him. In his second main phase, Tymna triggers and Kevin declines to draw. He casts Elvish Mystic. He passes. At the end of Kevin's turn, Matt activates War Room, paying a life and drawing a card. Matt also activates Blast Zone, putting another counter on it. The turn moves to Matt. Matt draws and casts Rhystic Study. He passes. Mike draws and plays a Sunbaked Canyon. He taps it to help cast his commander, Winota, Joiner of Forces. Rhystic triggers and Matt draws. Winota resolves and he moves to combat, attacking Matt with Professional Facebreaker and Ornithopter and Kevin with Sarah Ascendant. Winota triggers, Mike looks at the top 6 and puts Thalia's Lancers onto the battlefield tapped and attacking Kevin. Lancers trigger and Mike searches the top 4 due to Avon Mind Sensor. He fails to find and then Kevin blocks Thalia's Lancers with Collector Oof. Before damage, Matt taps the Cephalid Coliseum to sacrifice Blast Zone. Both Mayhem Devils trigger, and Kevin targets the Spirit of the Labyrinth and Matt targets Ignoble Hierarch. Kevin then floats mana from Ignoble Hierarch before both it and Spirit of the Labyrinth are destroyed. Still before damage, Kevin uses his floating mana to help flash in an opposition agent. Finally, damage happens and Mike gains 6 life. All finished up, Mike gives the turn to Kevin. Kevin draws and pays 2 life to help cast Birthing Pod. In response, Mike sacrifices a treasure, adding a white. Mayhem Devil triggers, targeting Kevin's opposition agent. In response, Kevin casts Veil of Summer. In response, Mike sacrifices another treasure and adds a red. Mayhem Devil triggers and deals 1 damage to Kevin's opposition agent. Then Mike sacrifices his last treasure, adding a white. Mayhem Devil triggers, dealing 1 damage and killing Kevin's opposition agent. Then Kevin's Veil resolves and he draws a card. He pays 2 life to help activate Birthing Pod, sacrificing Elvish Mystic. He fetches up a Grand Abolisher onto the battlefield. He casts Thorn of Amethyst. With nothing else, Kevin gives the turn to Matt. Matt draws and plays a snow-covered island. He casts Spellskite. He ships the turn. Mike draws and immediately moves to combat. He attacks Kevin with Sarah Ascendant, Ornithopter, Thalia's Lancers, and Winota. Winota triggers, Mike looks at the top 6 and fails to find. Kevin blocks Thalia's Lancers with Grand Abolisher, takes the rest, and Mike gains 6. In his second main phase, he plays a Mana Confluence. He cracks his Sunbaked Canyon to draw a card. Mayhem Devil triggers, dealing 1 damage to Kevin. Mike casts Alseid of Life's Bounty. He ends his turn. Kevin draws and taps his Ancient Tomb to help cast his other commander, Tana the Bloodsower. He pays 2 life to help activate Birthing Pod, sacrificing Tana. He fetches up a Karmic Guide onto the battlefield. It enters and he returns Elesh Norn to the battlefield. Ornithopter and Ethersworn die, and satisfied with his turn, Kevin passes. At the end of Kevin's turn, Matt taps his Cephalid Coliseum to flash in Hullbreaker Horror. Matt draws and casts Gilded Drake. Hullbreaker triggers and bounces Chalice of the Void. Drake enters and exchanges control with Elesh Norn. Matt casts March of Swirling Mists where X equals 0. Hullbreaker triggers and targets Thorn of Amethyst. In response, Mike taps his Mana Confluence to help cast Path to Exile, targeting Hullbreaker Horror. In response, Matt pays 2 life to help activate Spellskite, redirecting Path of Exile to itself. Path resolves, Spellskite is exiled, and Matt declines to search for a land. Then Thorn is bounced, and Matt follows it up by tapping Cephalid Coliseum to sacrifice his Inventor's Fair. He fetches up a Mana Crypt into his hand. He casts Mana Crypt. Hullbreaker triggers and bounces Jeweled Lotus. He presents a loop of casting and bouncing Mana Crypt and Jeweled Lotus through Hullbreaker Horror, tapping them for mana before he returns them to his hand. He generates infinite mana. He activates Urza, like a lot of times. He exiles and casts Sensei's Divining Top, Mana Vault, Winter Orb, Back to Basics, and Witching Well. Hullbreaker triggers for each and he bounces his opponent's non-land permanents. He casts Narset, Parter of Veils. He casts Time Spiral. He holds priority and casts Narset's Reversal, targeting his own Time Spiral. Time Spiral is bounced to his hand and he creates a copy of it. Everyone shuffles their graveyards and hands into their libraries. Matt draws 7 and his opponents only draw 1 because of Narset. He presents a loop of activating Urza, exiling his library to cast and counter his own spells with Swan Song to create a 2/2 bird. He then casts Time Spiral and uses Narset's Reversal to bounce and copy Time Spiral, starting the loop over again. He creates infinite 2/2 birds this way. He passes the turn to his opponents, who have no cards in hand and no non-land permanents in play. One by one, they pass back to him, knowing nothing they cast will resolve. On his turn, he swings his infinite birds at each of them, and Matt wins the game. Ladies and gentlemen, what a game. Congrats to Matt on his win. This was a wild game indeed. It was unclear until the end who had the upper hand, as the dominant player at the table was constantly shifting back and forth. Matt bided his time, waiting out counter wars and amassing resources turn after turn. Hullbreaker Horror is such a powerful card, and even more so because you flash it in for maximum destructive potential. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more like this, be sure to subscribe. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Tune in next time when we duke it out to see who will be king of the competitive EDH table. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.